We asked ourselves all week, are the Panthers ready for prime time? Well, after what we saw Monday night in San Francisco, the resounding answer to that is no, especially on offense in a 20-9 loss against the 49ers, a game in which the pass attack was putrid like it was against the Saints 2 weeks ago. Welcome to Panthers on the Plus. I'm your host, WCNC Charlotte Sports Director Nick Carboni. John Ellis is always ready for prime time, although he's preparing for drive time down there on Fox Sports Upstate in South Carolina. Also does Panthers pregame on 99.7 The Fox, and you can go visit him at Clutch Bar on Sunday morning before the Panthers take on the NFC West leading and NFC leading LA Rams on Sunday. That'll be a tough one. We'll talk about it. John, let's call it an unofficial Panthers segment called What Was That? So, John, I ask you that first. What was that?
What was that? Well, that sums up many years you and I have been here together covering this team. Yeah, what was that? In a way, I was talking with our friends Mac and Bone this morning on FNZ. They had me on, and I said, guys, this is a lot like the NFL season at large. Every team, with the exception of maybe a couple, so volatile, so unpredictable. Week to week, you just don't know what you're going to end up with. And obviously, San Francisco is a good team. They have a lot of good players on offense. They were depleted on defense. And that was my analysis going into this game, is your opportunities were absolutely there to take advantage. But all the great analysis goes to waste because it's the league, it's the NFL, and all of a sudden you got Ike Ekwonu struggling at left tackle against Bryce Huff, of all people, with no Bosa in the lineup. Warner is not anywhere to be found because he's on IR. So you think, okay, you get the running game going, but that what seemed to be a 55-minute drive to open the game, I think, did a little number on Carolina. And perhaps the head coach, Dave Canales, who we just spoke with in his press conference there, maybe it influenced his tempo of play calling there is the running game. That was the stunner to me, Nick. No offense to the coach or their staff, but Rico Dowdle is a very explosive player. He only had 6 carries in that game.
Yeah, okay, so Dave Canales on his Tuesday afternoon kind of wrap-up call from the game the night before admitted to us, yes, I could have called a better game, basically paraphrasing, especially when it comes to the run game. John, we've heard Matt Rule say this. I'm going to run the ball this many times and not do it. How is the head coach coming on the day after saying, oh, yeah, you said we should have run the ball? We absolutely should have run the ball more after 9 carries by the running backs. Like, what is the disconnect there, do you think?
You know, I don't know. In that particular game, I think maybe it was a matter of the carryover from Atlanta. I think, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but there was maybe just a mention of that last night by Dave or Bryce that we felt good about what happened last week in Atlanta, paraphrasing here, with the passing game, and maybe that was more of a priority this time around. Maybe there were some matchups they liked in the passing game. I think coaches, you've covered this game for a long time and sports for a long time. They're going to say things, and obviously they're not going to tip their hand. When Matt Rule said that many years ago, we kind of chuckled at it. We could have 30 carries a game, he said, or else Joe Brady's fired is what he meant. And he was a man of his word because Joe wouldn't run the ball like that. He just wouldn't run into a brick wall. In this case, I think Dave is just trying to, do the PR deal. But I think there's some conviction there, too. He comes from Tampa Bay. He comes from Seattle. He was steadfast with the run game in both those places, including his 1 year as a coordinator with Rachaad White. Whether it worked or not, Rachaad, I believe, was right around 4 yards a carry. He would bang that ball and make sure they were committed to it, which is why yesterday's game in that environment surprised me. So we're all human. Coaches are human. And I think that was a human moment for Dave to say, I did some inventory. Yeah, we can't let the game get away from us to a point where we forget about our playmakers. Running back's an interesting position, Nick. They're not on there on the boundary. They're not part of the modern structure of offense. You almost have to force fit them into your structure. And all of a sudden, Rico shows up on the scene here. Chuba's the guy. There's a component to his game, Nick, that just goes beyond the yardage. There's an energy to his game that lifts others, I do believe. And I think that's what was missing, among other things, yesterday in that game.
All right, so regardless of the run game, John, and you kind of mentioned it in the beginning of the segment, like this was a pass defense to be had by a passing attack that had Atlanta's number 1 rated defense by some metrics and statistics for a franchise performance the week before. How concerning was it that Bryce Young, Dave Canales, and this passing game could not take advantage?
I want to say it's concerning, but here's the thing, Nick. I don't see trends anymore. That, like, when you have a program that's established for maybe 4 or 5 years, and they have an identity and they have a core, and you see something they do so well go away the next week, you're like, okay, it would be like Mahomes throwing it 15 times for the Chiefs. That's not what they do. With Canales, I think he's trying, it's like a boxing match, trying to just throw a couple haymakers and just see what lands right now. And I think in this case, what worked for this team, and this is just my observation, the Dallas game comes to mind, the Miami game comes to mind, Green Bay. You talk about a great win on the road for fans that are ready to, look off the ledge. Please don't, because this team has done some good things this year, and they still can. The common thread was Rico Dowdle, and I don't want to make too much of it. The offensive line deserves credit, but I just think he brings a different element to this game, and I think when it comes to Dave and his play designs and his structure, the passing game was not as crisp this time around. I think you got to give Frisco a lot of credit. Robert Saleh schemed some things up pressure-wise, and it goes to show you can't always look at all these numbers we look at all week and say, well, that's where you hit them. Sometimes it's about people, not numbers.
All right, John, it just like big picture, it just seemed like a team that wasn't ready for the stage. It made me question whether this current iteration of the franchise will be ready for the stage. What did you think of just the way they kind of came out in this game, a gotta-have-it game to own first place, first prime time game in 2 seasons, and just to look that out of sorts?
Yeah. Let me carve this in 2 halves here. The first half of this pie is going to be the side I agree with that on, that you cannot have those type of self-inflicted mistakes in a primetime game or any game, but especially a playoff environment game on the road where the game is never really out of hand. And when you do sort of the rough math on what happened, a Bryce Young interception that I'm sorry, I've seen all the film I can see for 5-6 years on this team. That's the worst one he's thrown that I've ever seen. You can't do that. The coach didn't put him in a great position there, but he gave him a run option. Then you talk about things like Leggett. His foot goes out of bounds. That's the second time this year that's happened. They throw a flag on that. The catch is incomplete. You talk about the fact that there was a fumble on the ground, and they had it, and it squirts away. The positive is this. They were never truly out of this game despite all of that. And you look at what J.C. Horn was able to do, Mike Jackson, and they're getting no pressure. They've had no quarterback hits basically in 2 weeks, 0 sacks in a quarter and a half, I think it is. 2 quarters and a half, 10 quarters. 2 games and a half, 10 quarters. Long night. But you get the point here.
Yeah.
10 quarters since they've really done anything to hit the quarterback or sack the quarterback, but they're still holding up because they're stopping the run, they're tackling well, and now they're getting takeaways. So on one hand, I'm with you. They weren't prepared. They looked sloppy. Every phase of the game looked out of sorts at a certain point, but they still almost had a chance to win. So I think that's part of the message too. Now this opponent coming up, I'm sure we'll talk about them. I truly feel like they may not lose another game this year, but we'll get into it.
All right. Is the Bryce Young that we're going to be looking at the rest of the year the one we saw in Atlanta or the one we saw in San Francisco? I'm going to pose that to John Ellis when Panthers on the Plus returns. Welcome back to Panthers on the Plus, talking about Carolina's primetime letdown at San Francisco on Monday Night Football, here with John Ellis from Fox Sports Upstate and 99.7, the Fox Panthers pregame. You can hear him Sunday morning ahead of the Carolina-LA Rams matchup. John, we've got to talk about Bryce Young. It's a wait-and-see year as a possible extension or more likely option year looms. Listen, I mean, Dan Morgan's not running to that pen after the Atlanta game to sign him. Is he running to the trash can to throw a drafted contract away after what he sees from him in San Francisco now with 5 games left on the season?
Nick, boy, that is the big question with this whole organization right now, and I think we can pretend like it doesn't exist, and I'm certainly one of those that feel like let's not hot take this one to death, but we're getting a little long in the tooth here. We got 50-year option discussions coming up, and I'm not so certain that's going to happen. And here's the thing with Bryce Young. My goodness, he has shown some flashes. The Atlanta game was outstanding. He should get credit, and it shouldn't be diminished that he always just wins in Atlanta. Now, you go to Green Bay, and he's banged up in that game. He's operating at a high level late without anything to do with the passing game in terms of audibles, checks. But let's be honest. That's all sounding great and cute and technical. You got to stop throwing for 128 yards, 148 yards, 165 yards. I don't want to sound like a meathead here, but we need some 200-yard games from him, some fundamentally consistent games. The thing with Bryce early in the season, we struggled again out of the gate when you're talking about Jacksonville, slamming the tablet, getting frustrated. And then week 2, he fumbles on the first play of the game, basically. Now, they almost come back and win. I think there's value in that second half. But throughout this season, it's been less about him and more about Rico, the running game, developing Tet, and the defense stopping the run with special teams being great. I don't want to get away from that. I was talking to Billy Marshall about this, and I said, you build this team to be quarterback-proof. I think that's what Dan Morgan's trying to do. He played for a team that was very much that way, and Jake Delhomme walked into a good roster and made it even better. I think that's what they're trying to do with Bryce here, take it a little bit off his shoulders, I would hope they would, and not make it all about him. Dave had talked about that when he took this job. We don't want Bryce to feel like it's all on him, and I think the roster construction has been great. Bryce has to do his part now. He needs to be a number 1 overall pick, level player that elevates others. That Atlanta game is a little bit extreme, but something in between what we see on a week-to-week basis, and that is the sweet spot.
All right, on the positive side, John, and with as many guys as they had to mix and match in there, how impressed are you with Ejiro Evero's performance with this defense this year, especially on Monday Night Football?
I'm impressed on many levels. And, A.C. Carter, Jonathan Cooley, a lot of people on that staff deserve a ton of credit. That secondary, one of the great things of watching that film last night, I couldn't wait to get my hands on it. They were swarming. It reminded me so much when Wilkes took over for Rule. They went to Seattle. They picked up Geno Smith. They're doing things in the secondary right now that just you can see the confidence in this group. Obviously, we have news about Trevon Merrick. Horn may be out with a concussion. Long term, though, what a great core they have. And Evero, he's been under fire. If you listen to what fans have to say about this guy, he was the reason they gave up that many yards last year. Oh, it's the quarter structure. He's one of the Fangio bros. It's time to go get somebody like Rex Ryan who's going to blitz nonstop. I don't know, man. I think he is a brilliant head coach, or he was a brilliant defensive coordinator, can be a brilliant head coach. He's a great defensive mind with some great influences, and I think this is a great story, among others, that he has stayed the course with his system. They protect, like Greg Olsen said in that game, they protect 6 points, fly downhill and do their thing without blitzing too many, and they're getting it done right now. It's impressive.
John, as pathetic as the passing attack was, as embarrassing as parts of the game were in front of the national stage, and Panthers kind of were the butt of the joke a few times from the broadcast booth and elsewhere, and I'm sure on the Manning cast. 6 wins, 500 the week of Thanksgiving, half a game out of the division. I mean, do you see progress? Do you see sustainable progress? But, of course, a lot of that hinges on the conversation we just had about who the quarterback might be.
Yeah, I do see sustainable progress. I do. Look, that's a San Francisco team that people forget is, a 7 or 8 win team right now. They know how to win in winning time. They've been there. Kyle Shanahan is a great coach. Robert Saleh is a great hire. They're doing more with less on defense than any team in the league right now. So that loss, in a way, was embarrassing for many reasons outside of football, including a little action at the end of that game. But I think this season at 6-6, the timing is what I think gets people a little bit peeved. You start to feel like, okay, Tampa's coming back. We're coming on. Don't lose to the Saints at home. And then don't go to San Francisco and play like that. But 6-6 is what it is. And I think the biggest looming question, let's take, for instance, my 15-year-old son, Andrew. The biggest looming question he has is, Dad, this feels great. I've never felt this way. It's a playoff race, but I'm worried about Bryce. I'm like, you're every fan right now. It's sort of an empty feeling in a way because the quarterback regresses, and then he shows out, and then he regresses. If he can stabilize this thing, the fans will feel better. But I'm going to tell you something, Nick. I've been following this team since 1995. Few are the opportunities to get into Thanksgiving week and have a battle on your hands down the stretch for a division title. It's a great time to be a Panthers fan relative to where we've been recently, so I'll take it.
All right, John, let's play this out as an exercise when it comes to Bryce Young and the potential option year. Let's just presume that he is as uneven as he has been this season for the next 5 games. Let's, not assume he's going to go on a tear like he did last year, although that's certainly possible as we saw. But if Bryce Young continues this unevenness, has maybe one more 200-yard game, maybe one more kind of flash moment, what do you think Dan Morgan might do?
That is a wonderful question that requires a lot of thought.
For Dan Morgan?
For Dan Morgan, luckily not for me. I get to be the fatty in the background looking at all these prospects and saying, oh, no, Billy, oh, Nick, we're doing this again. I think that's the fear I have for this organization, is you have to go through that whole thing all over again. I spoke to somebody within the league this week that's been scouting for a long time, and they said, John, Bryce is not perfect. He's not without his flaws. But there are some things going on there with the receiving core. He's got a rookie and, a guy from Arizona that was outstanding, McMillan, and he makes plays. He's still raw, though. Leggett, obviously, is the number 2. Think of it in the context of where Dave Canales came from. The number 1 was Mike Evans. The number 2 was Chris Godwin. And then they got like 5 other number 2s on that team. So they're not as great as you think in certain spots. Bryce has to do a lot of the heavy lifting. The offensive line has been banged up. And as this evaluator told me, what if you have the Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold on your roster right now and it's Bryce Young? What if Sam is the next Kevin O'Connell project? You could see it from 1,000 miles away, Nick. But you know what? That would be their business, not Dan's, not Dave's. Dave did not draft Bryce. And I have no intel on what their thoughts are, but I have to imagine the play needs to be better than this for them to move forward with a new contract.
All right,
if that's the case, quickly, I would look heavily into the midline free agency market at that point, wherever we land up in that sector. It's not a good market this next year, but drafting in the top 10, 15, trading up again, that seems like a major step back, and the draft is so volatile right now, I don't even know where to start.
All right, we could look at all the stats in the matchup this week with Seattle, but I think the biggest thing that stands out to me, John, is the game is at 1 o'clock, so maybe there will be a better performance, not in prime time. We're going to talk about this game and the upcoming schedule to close the season, as the Panthers are still in position to try and make a playoff push coming up. The Panthers play the Rams on Sunday. I just want to get that out. I have Seahawks written down on my sheet of paper, John, maybe because my biggest fear is Sam Darnold comes in here and buries the whole thing around Christmas time. But let's not even think about that yet. First, we've got Matt Stafford playing at an MVP level, the class of the NFC coming into Carolina's house on Sunday. But in the last couple of losses, as bad as they've looked, Carolina's bounced back. It's going to be tough, John, no doubt about it. Do you think they come out a little better in the early afternoon here in Charlotte, North Carolina? Rams coming in from the West Coast.
And again, I bring up the nature of the NFL this year. We've seen so many wild, crazy storylines, upsets, teams you have penciled in for a win, and all of a sudden they're getting beat. Hell, the Giants almost beat the Lions this week. With Jameis Winston catching a touchdown. So the larger point is, there are very few things that surprise me anymore. Yes, Carolina, I think, can play a hell of a lot better at home, 1 p.m., back in their comfort zone. I don't think the Rams fans travel particularly well, so it should be a nice environment out there at the bank. Stafford, though, here's the issue. This is by far the best team left on their schedule. It's probably the best team they will have seen all year. It's probably the best team in the whole league, in my estimation, because they don't have a weakness. They have a quarterback playing younger than his age would represent right now. 23 tutties, 0 picks in the last 7 weeks. That's unbelievable. Kyron Williams, great running back. The line is solid up front. Nakua, weapons at tight end. And then obviously you have Devontae Adams as just a goal line merchant that can catch 20 fade routes if he needs to. Defensively, where it's at, Chris Shula obviously is going to be head coach one day. It's, for some, a no-name defense, but we know these names. Jared Verse from the ACC, Braden Fisk. Young is a great linebacker, and they get Emmanuel Forbes from Washington off the scrap heap. He's playing at a Pro Bowl level. They just are fast, they're physical, they're young, except for Stafford, and they are a great team with a great head coach. This is going to be a great test, but this is a good way to view it if you are into the angle that I'm into here. It's been a long time coming for this team to get a barometer on where they are, okay? Last night in San Francisco, that was not a very good barometer test. That was more of a, oh, crap, I dropped the machine, and now we can't even do the test. Come in sharp, be prepared, get back home, have a nice turkey dinner, and go out there and play physical. One key to this, they know each other well. Dave knows Evero, and Evero obviously knows everybody in L.A. The schemes are parallel in a lot of ways. That should make it a dynamic matchup. I can't pick Carolina to win this game in good conscience. They could. Anything's possible in this league. They have to play the perfect game, and I hope Rico Dowdle gets a lot of carries in this game. put some attitude back into this offense, take the burden off of Bryce, and let him operate the game within structure. Don't ask him to go out there and throw the ball 40 times. They won't survive it against this front.
All right, John, can a team that's been inconsistent for 12 weeks find consistency after 13? Listen, we know it's going to be tough against Matt Stafford. J.C. Horn likely going to be out. He's in protocol here on Tuesday. Trayvon Merrick, starting safety, he's suspended for punching below the deck at the end of last night's game. So 6 and 7, then going into the bye. You get New Orleans after that, right? Is that the first game after that? I mean, that's kind of an easing into December. Can a team that's been inconsistent find consistency after 2/3 of the season is over?
Sure, absolutely. 2014 is a good example. Different season, different personnel. They were 3-8-1, Nick. They roll into December, and they had an opportunistic window with teams struggling. The whole division was like at 5-7 at that point. They rip off 4 straight wins. That's when Cam wrecked his truck and Derek Anderson came in for a game. They make the playoffs at 7-8-1.
We did QB car accident last year, John. We did that last year.
We're done with those.
No more of that.
No more of those. But nonetheless, I've seen it here. I've seen it with several playoff teams. I've seen the Carolina Panthers of 2003 lose 3 straight in November to Philly, to Atlanta, and to Dallas, and people were in a panic. That team beat one team all season long with a winning record. It was Indy on the road. They were all cupcakes after that. It didn't seem to matter much once they hit the playoffs. There's something to dream of, okay? I hate to just say this because I pride myself on being an analyst and not, a fanatic. If they lose this week and Tampa happens to beat the Cardinals, which is a likely outcome on both ends, Carolina wins 4 straight and they win the division. Do the math. They would be tied at 10-7 at that point at the end of the season because Carolina would have beat them twice. There are avenues still if this doesn't go their way this week. But I would advise them to, if they want to make a playoff run, start by not doing some of the self-inflicted things they did at San Francisco that cost them an opportunity to be in control of the division because nobody beat the Panthers quite like the Panthers on Monday night. It was a bad display of football, and that goes all the way up to the head coach, and I think he knows it. So don't beat yourself. Give them all you've got, and let it be something you take with you, even if you don't be a playoff team this year. You have that in the bank. You've got that in terms of your memory bank as an athlete, as a player that you went toe-to-toe with Stafford and company. I'm not overly optimistic with all those players listed as being out and questionable, but next man up. Let's see who can do it. It's not unprecedented.
All right, John, yeah, you kind of mentioned Canales and the way things played out last night. This is my final question for you here on Panthers on the Plus. Is this a team, and maybe 500 teams are just like this, but I think there's a history with this team this year doing this where they just need to learn the hard way. Is that kind of like, does the coach need to learn the hard way? Does the quarterback and the team overall just need to learn these hard lessons and then go forward and be better the next time out as they have been the last couple of losses?
Absolutely. Absolutely, without question. You look at the eras of coaches in this organization. Go back to John Fox's first year, which feels a little more like Dave Canales' second. 7-9, but they lost 8 straight in the middle. They had to learn some hard lessons. Michael Vick ran for like 1,000 yards on them alone in 2 games. It was miserable, but they closed strong. They beat Cleveland, a playoff team. They knocked the Saints out of the playoffs. That was a stepping stone. One more example, 2012, Ron Rivera. I'm sure you've done your research on that before you came here in 2016, Nick. That team was stinking up the joint in Cam's second year. There was a lot of talk on talk radio about Ron's got to go. He's got no personality. At one point, I think they were probably 3-7, 3-8. They go on a run, they close it out, they end 7-9, then they go next year to the playoffs, then off to the Super Bowl. That's what you want. You want to get into the month of December in the hunt. That was the goal this year when I started doing the shows at the beginning of the season. Said, let's see this team with a viable playoff shot. They're here. They're right there on the doorstep. The schedule is very hard. Who cares? That's life. You beat the Packers on the road already. You can play with anybody in this league. Again, the Rams are a tough one. But the rest of these teams I look at, including Tampa, not exactly in great shape right now with their quarterback hurt, with their defense leaky. It's a great opportunity to see if they can steal a few. Tampa may slide. If they get in, and it's not impossible, this NFC, with the exception of the Rams, who's the best other than that? It's wide open. There's not a team in that playoff structure that Carolina, if they're smart and they're playing their best ball and healthy, they couldn't go toe-to-toe with. And that's a good thing. That's progress.
John, I don't know if that's brick, but I'm running through it after that, buddy.
Yeah.
There's hope. We're thankful for you bringing the hopium today. But, your perspective on the Panthers, just history is awesome, and current Panthers team is great as well. So find John Ellis at number one, Panther Place. Hear him on 99.7, the Fox pregame. Go see him this Sunday at Clutch Bar right there off of Cedar Street and Fox Sports Upstate. John, thanks for being with us, man.
Nick, I enjoyed it, man. Thank you.
All right, Panthers on the Plus returns next Monday after the Panthers take on the LA Rams.